Welcome back to Sonia Space. This is your host, Sonia. And on today's episode, we're honored to have Megan Dalla-Camina, author of Women Rising, a powerful work that explores women in the leadership space and certain challenges that women face that holds them back from embracing their true, authentic self. Megan brings a unique perspective on navigating these challenges that women face, and we'll be talking about the inspiration behind the book, the writing journey, and the impact it's having. Thank you for joining me. How are you doing today?
I'm very well. Great to be here with you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let's start off with you giving a little bit of background information about yourself, about your book.
Yeah. So Megan Dalla-Camina, as you can tell, probably I'm Australian. Live in Sydney. I run a worldwide women's leadership and empowerment company called Women Rising. I'm an author. Bit of backstory. I spent 18 years in the corporate world. So working for companies like GE, PwC, IBM, Australia, in Asia, in the US, or all around the world. And then I've spent 13 years in my own company, focusing solely on women's leadership, women's empowerment, professional personal development, and writing books. So yeah, Women Rising, my fourth book, on really looking at like what are the forces outside of us that hold us back as women so that we really
Yeah.
understand that it's not just us and that we're not the problem and where we fit into the system and patriarchy. And then, what are the tools that we have so that we can rise on our own terms?
Yeah, I love that. I was reading your book and I really love how you broke everything down and it's very easy to understand and straight to the point. I really love your insight on this,
Thank
on women
you.
empowerment and leadership, and I'm really looking forward to talking about it. So, I know that you've worked in the corporate space for all of these years and you have your business, but was there like a particular event or did something happen that inspired you to write Women Rising?
I really like what you just said about breaking it all down and like the insight. And for me, this book is really trying to make sense of what is going on for women, particularly for women in professional workspaces, but really all of us. And looking at so many of the issues that I was grappling with in the corporate world and now working with thousands and thousands of women all over the world and the challenges that they have around really rising on their own terms, creating the careers that they want, having the personal lives that they want, how we put that together, where motherhood fits into it, and how this all
Mhm.
sits in the landscape of the patriarchy. So it wasn't one moment. It was accumulation of 20 years of what is going on under the surface that we don't talk about and that we
Yeah.
haven't yet made sense of. And that's where the paradoxes of power that I write about in part one, it really helping women understand that. And I wrote it so that I could deeply understand it. It's what we do as writers a lot of the time. And I'm a researcher. And then what's in our control? This work around how we internalize the patriarchy as our inner critic. What do we do with that? And how do we make sense of that for women? So that's really why I wrote this book. I had waited many years in between books because I was deep in the building and scaling of the Women Rising program that we run. And because I just felt like it needed to be the right time, like the right moment
Mhm.
and the right cumulative forces coming together to be able to tell that story and to be able to unpack those themes for women. It wasn't like, one wake up moment. It was, all of the moments put together.
Yeah, that's great. And I appreciate you putting in that work, not only from the experience, like you said, you put in the work to even understand like what you're talking about and what you need to say. And that's awesome. So I took an excerpt from your book and I was actually really shocked about that, especially the second sentence. It says 10.4% of women running Fortune 500 companies and fewer than a third of UN nations having ever had a woman leader. At the current rate, achieving full gender equality could take close to 300 years. And you would think we've progressed so much. Wait, what?
Yeah.
300 years. I was really shocked by reading that, and I know you have the experience, you've worked with all sorts of people and you went up that career ladder. I was really shocked to actually read that in this day and
Yeah.
age.
Yeah, like we're often shocked by the stats, and there's many different statistics that come out of the UN and different research studies around just how long is it going to take and what are we actually looking at. But anywhere from 45 years to 300 years That is how far we have to go. And I think we are shocked by that. Women are shocked by that. Men, we do a lot of work. I do a lot of work with men as male allies. They are completely staggered that this
Mhm.
is, that this is where we still are. And that's why it's so important that we make sense of, why is this the case? There's certain things that we talk about on the top level that impact women. But what we're really looking at in the book is what sits underneath that. These
Mm.
paradoxes of power that impact women that we don't talk about. But when women start to understand them, everything makes more sense. And that's when they can really start to step into their power, so that we can, I really believe, we talk a lot about systems change and structural change. We've been waiting for that for decades upon decades upon decades, and the
Yeah.
numbers aren't really moving. We move forward, we come back. We move forward, we come back. I really believe that what is going to really impact change, one, women feeling empowered and having the tools to be able to rise on their own terms, and men stepping up as allies and truly
Yeah.
stepping up as advocates for women. We can't wait for the systems and the structures to change, because we'll be sitting here forever.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a systemic issue, but it also comes down to self-awareness and like you said, like figuring out what's under the surface. Like what are we
Mm.
doing as women too that's holding us back as well? And you brought up another good point, men being allies. And I feel
Yeah.
like I've worked in a corporate space and you don't necessarily get that, there's it can get competitive or, they try to put you down in a certain way, especially if you're young. I feel like I've dealt with that a lot. So I do think that the men also need to step up for
Yeah.
us. I know you're talking about breaking things apart in the book, and you mentioned the 13 archetypes of the inner critic and how high achieving women can break free from self doubt to lead with a conscious confidence. Can you just name a few of these archetypes? Like, what do you mean by these 13 archetypes mentioned in the book?
Yeah, great question. So the second part of the book is looking at the stories we tell ourselves as women that hold us back. Where do they come from and how do they show up in our lives? So that we can start to, really unravel those stories and create stories that will help us take the action that we want to take, have the careers that we want to have, live our lives in the way that we want to live. So the inner critic is this voice inside your head, and your listeners, the women, will understand what I say as I talk through this. They're the
Mhm.
stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. And it's the meaning that we make about what's happened to us, what we see. And they're things like, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not pretty enough, it's too late for me, I'm too young, I'm too old. All of these stories that shape the actions that we take in the world, and really importantly, shape how we feel about ourselves. So the archetypes, you can think about them like the different personalities of the inner critic. And we all have multiple of these. So they're archetypes like the perfectionist, the people pleaser, the good girl, the ideal mother, the overachiever. That's mine. It's my personal flavor of the inner critic. And they all have different groundings of like where does this come from? What is the socialization for us as women, or for me as an individual, that has created this archetypal story within my psyche, and what do I do with that? So that's that. We go through 13 of them and really unravel, where does this come from? What's the light side? Everything has a light and a shadow. So what's good about this? If I'm a perfectionist, then in some way that serves me. That perfectionist behavior in some ways serves me. So it might be, I'm really good at my job. Like, I never let anything, go until it's absolutely perfect. It could
Yeah.
be that I have a sparkling clean home. If that's you, I envy you. That's not me, because I like everything perfect. So in some ways that will serve you, or else you wouldn't be doing it. But then there's the shadow side, right? Perfectionist, everything has to be absolutely perfect. And the strain that causes on us, on our energy, the perfectionists burn out, because they're constantly, as I said, making everything just right. And that overachiever piece comes in as well. And then how do we manage those stories? What do we do with that so that we can create better narratives for ourselves? So that's the framework of the 13 inner critic archetypes.
I love that. So I actually read through like the basic description of the archetypes because I'm like, okay, which ones do I resonate with?
Yeah.
The perfectionist was definitely one. Whatever
Mhm.
you just described, that's me. That's
Okay.
literally me. And then there was the empath, the overachiever. I really struggle with that. And you mentioned for me when I wake up, my house has to be clean or I cannot start my day. My environment has to be clean before I can go on about my day and
Mm,
everything just has to be perfect. But of course, like the downside to that, the shadow side to that is the burnout. And I
yes.
do feel that. I do. I was reading through that and I really like how you worded it. You put the light side and the shadow side, like the
Mm,
pros and cons of that, and the empath as well. Cause I feel like I absorb a lot of people's emotions and then it'll just like sit
yeah.
very heavy with me. And it's really nice to kind of read through that and you're just like, oh wow, like where did this stem from? And how can I switch things up and make it easier on myself or work my way through this? So I really, like I said, I love how you broke it all down with these archetypes. I know you mentioned that everyone has multiple of these archetypes.
Yeah.
I know I did. But I'm just curious, like, were there any that you saw more of? Like when you maybe like talked to
Mm.
people, did your research, did you see more of something? Maybe in the corporate space or maybe another space there was more of something else. I'm just really curious from a research perspective.
Yeah, that's a great question, and thank you for sharing what you see, for yourself. I think there's a couple that are really prevalent for women, and that when I look at like if I just look at the Women Rising program that I teach, we've had 10,500 women in 73 countries in 5 years go through that program. So like all ages, all stages, all cultures, like it's a really big pool of women, right? And when I look at what those women have said about their archetypes in terms of, data, the perfectionist is one that as soon as you say perfectionist, women are instant recognize, like I see you. The people pleaser is another one that's really significant for women. And this is because, socially, we are cultivated as women to be kind, nurturing, take care of people, put other people's needs ahead of ourselves, right? That's all social conditioning. Sit within your gendered feminine traits and energies and don't step outside that. And so, we're really deeply trained as women. And then you can put a cultural aspect across that as well.
Yeah.
Particularly Asian cultures. I do a lot of work in Asia, have for 30 years. So you can put, and not just Asia, but, certainly we see that so much of women experiencing the gender layer and then the cultural layer of, like be the good daughter, be
Mhm.
the ideal mother, be the perfect wife, and how that all comes together. So people pleaser is a big one. Perfectionist is a big one. I think the ideal mother is another one. And this conflict between I need to be a perfect mother and be the ideal mother and fit that characteristic that patriarchy sets for women. And
Mhm.
for women who work outside the home, we then get into one of the paradoxes I write about in the first part of the book, the motherhood paradox, where women are expected to work like they don't have children and mother like they don't have jobs outside the home.
Oh,
So we hit this paradox and then we wonder as women, why do we always feel guilty? Particularly as mothers, why do I always feel guilty? Why do I feel like I'm never succeeding at anything? Like I don't feel like I'm doing as much as I need to at home. I don't feel like I'm doing as much as I can at work in ways that men are just never asked to think about themselves and think about their roles in life. So yeah, so
yeah.
there's some of there's some, I mean, I could talk about all of them, but there's some of the
Mhm.
really big ones that I think are very common and women share a lot of characteristics across those three in particular.
Yeah. You talked about so I'm South Asian and
Mm.
you talked about being a perfectionist and people pleasing, the ideal mother. And the reason why I started my podcast is because I feel like there's not much of a representation for South Asian women in the
Yeah.
podcast community. And I've dealt with all of that because you have the societal and the cultural expectations, like seeing my mother and my grandmother, and just kind of the generational trauma that was passed
Yeah.
along to us, and the traits that we picked up on. And then, you come to a point that you want to be the person to break through these barriers
Mm.
and break through the generational trauma. And a lot of it has to do with being a people pleaser, being a
Mm.
perfectionist, being a career oriented woman is a social stigma,
Yeah.
right? Like, and even if you're doing both, you have to be good at being a mom and being good at your career. I mean, and
Yeah.
that can be really tough. That can be really hard to
Mm.
balance, in my opinion, because of all the expectations that are coming from the outside.
Yeah.
So I totally understand that. And you also mentioned women embracing their femininity, right? I think that's kind of a good thing because
Mm.
men don't have these traits, right? Like I feel like women tend to be more empathetic. They tend to have, in my opinion, higher emotional intelligence. But we can use this in the world of leadership, right? We can use this as a benefit for us.
Yes. So I teach and have done for probably about 18 years. I've been on this bandwagon about feminine and masculine traits. And just to be really clear, all genders, no matter where you sit on the gender spectrum, we all have the capacity for the feminine and the masculine, okay, within
Mhm.
us. It's like the Shiva and the Shakti, the yin and the yang, it all sits within all of us. The challenge is that particularly in the work world, in workplaces, and this stems from patriarchy, that women have not had permission to really embrace and lean into their feminine traits. We've been taught and conditioned at work that the masculine rules, right? If you look at
Yeah.
what is the definition of an ideal leader, they embrace command and control, they're driven, they're authoritative, they're ambitious, they're always on, right? They succeed for themselves, short-term thinking. These are all what the research would call masculine traits. And when we look at a lot of female leaders, particularly like I'm Gen X, so particularly Gen X and baby boomers and veterans, like if you just look at the generations, we were taught if you want to be successful as a leader, that's how you need to lead.
Yeah.
Women shifted and morphed themselves, and I see this with younger generations of women still coming through now, that this is still so prevalent. So our feminine aspects, our empathy, our vulnerability, our intuition, our collaboration kind of died on the vine, right? And then for younger women coming through, I would look up at more senior women and go, well, they're not role modeling any feminine traits. It's all masculine traits. So I guess that's what leadership looks like.
Mhm.
So, like, this is hugely problematic. And
Yeah.
it doesn't just impact us at work, because if we're working really baked into our masculine, then what happens? And I was just talking to hundreds of women about this last week in our program. We bring that home. And then we wonder why, well, I'm parenting in my masculine. I'm in my partnership in my masculine.
Yeah.
Where am I? And I no longer feel like myself. So it's not that we want to not have any of our masculine traits. We do. But we need to remember what we have lost and reclaim these feminine traits as core aspects of ourselves in our personal lives, but also in our working lives, so that we can feel authentic, so we don't burn ourselves out, and so that we aren't just always showing up with this mask on that is not who we are, but is how we've been trained to show up at work.
Yeah, that was a great way to put it. I do agree that women need to embrace those traits and that they can bring that into the business and corporate world. And you mentioned something about women in certain age ranges. And I have mostly worked with most of my managers were women. And I have
Mm.
seen a difference with the older women versus the younger women. I feel like the older women kind of made me, especially like going into the corporate world in my 20s, they made me feel like I have to work really, really
Really
freaking
hard.
hard. Even if I show up to be ambitious and I want to do whatever I can,
Mm.
they're like, you need to really prove yourself for the next 10, 20 years for
Yeah.
you to be in this position. It was very demoralizing. I just felt like, I did not have a good relationship with my manager like that. But when I
Yeah.
worked with younger women, they were very empowering. They're very supportive. And, you would assume that people that have are in those executive roles or in like higher, senior positions, they would pave the path and mentor those people and help them. But it was more of like, nah, I worked too hard to be here. So you also have to struggle like I do. It's like this form of projection that I'm seeing.
Mm,
But like it's not benefiting the younger women in the corporate space.
yeah. Like it's really important to name. And I do want to say there are so many women, and I come into contact with them every day, who are paving that path, who have paved that path. So like I just want to be really clear on that. And at the same time, yes, when we look at particularly baby boomers and veterans, these women who that's what they were shown, right?
Mhm.
They were taught, you need to like think of the times, right? Coming through in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and even the noughts. There's room for one woman at the top.
Mhm.
So it's really competitive, and you need to lead like a man to be successful. And, everybody else needs to do the same. So I fought so hard, exactly what you said. I fought so hard to get here. That's all I know.
Yeah.
Like this is the psyche of some of those women. So I always try and look, because I experienced them as well coming up as a young woman, and I was successful very young, when I was at GE and then again at PwC and then again at IBM, as the youngest general manager that they'd had, GM team, one other woman, all men. So I really understand what that feels like. And, I write about in one of my earlier books, Simple, Soulful, Sacred, that when a man sort of knocks you back at work, or when a man doesn't treat you the way that you think you should be treated, it's kind of like you expect it. You just expect that, well, this is competitive. It's the world of work. When a woman does it feels like a betrayal. Like it
Yeah.
feels like a betrayal to who we are, and that all women should help other women because it's just so tough out there. And I think that is number one. I think it's a role that we put on women that we would never put on men. Like you would never hear someone say all men need to support all men. And of course it would never happen, right?
Yeah.
So it's this pressure that we put on women. Of course, we would like to see all women supporting all women. We would like to see all senior women pulling the women up behind them. And we do see that a lot, but we do also see this hangover from all of this conditioning that those women had to face in that generation that is still absolutely lingering across workplaces today. And I just always look at those women with such empathy
Yeah.
rather than judgment, for knowing everything that I know and everything that I see, because I know how hard it was for them.
Mhm.
And it's hard, and it just can be really challenging to recraft all of their narratives and those stories to create something different. I think we are seeing a shift, but I think that like the younger women coming through, I'm seeing such a shift in terms of what they will put up with, what they expect, confidence levels. And I hope that drives change upwards.
Yeah, thank you for shedding some light on that. And I get that it's the conditioning, it's the psyche. You
Mhm.
need to, if someone's a certain way for a reason, right? And I get that. And I agree. It's unfortunate that this happens, but
Yeah.
we have people like you that are doing the research and to help women out there to really embrace themselves and really show up
Mhm.
for themselves. So I really appreciate that. Since we're talking about systemic changes, like what are some systemic changes organizations can make to help women truly rise as the corporate and business world is made for men?
Yeah, great question. I think there's a number of things. The first thing is we need to keep empowering women, right? We need to give women the support and the tools and the training and the development to really understand the systems that we live in, that we work in, and also what is within their power to
Mhm.
affect change on. That's why we built the Women Rising program, right? To give women that support and framework. So that's the first thing, keep supporting women. And with this rollback, particularly in the US, that we're seeing this rollback of DEI in all, not just corporate, in all aspects, I worry that investment in women is going to take a step back. So
Okay.
we need to keep our eye on that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we need men to step up. Like, we love men. We work with thousands of men around the world in our Male Allies program. And what we see from men is the vast majority of men want to be part of creating better workplaces. They want to be allies and advocates and sponsors for women, but they don't know what to do. They don't understand the statistics. Like, when I teach them and say, here are the stats globally, different regions, different industries around where we are in terms of gender equality, like, men are typically absolutely shocked. They don't understand. They say, I don't know what to do. I don't want to do the wrong thing. I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to inflict harm. There's so many I don't know. Give me the tools and the
Mhm.
support. And when they have them, they move from being good guys with good intentions to being true, active male allies for women. And that's what we need, particularly anyone in a management role or a leadership role. It is absolutely critical. So we want workplaces to really invest in their male allies so that they can start to do this heavy lifting to create change. And that then sheds light on all the biases that, the systemic issues that we have in workplaces, and
Mhm.
takes the onus off women to be the ones who need to fix it. Men are the ones who are in, most positions still of privilege and power in our workplaces.
Mhm.
So they're the ones who really need to understand what's going on, what's happening in the system. Where am I privileged? Where does my power come from? This is for white women as well, right? Where is my privilege and power as a white woman? And how do I then use that power and privilege to be an ally for Asian women, for Black women, for all women who don't have the power and privilege that I have? So, they're the really key areas that I see. And then there's all this, systems change and cultural change and organizational, but it's going to come from the people.
Yeah.
It's going to come from the people. And we're really passionate about empowering and supporting women through the Women Rising program, but we got to get the men, which is why we created the Male Allies work.
I actually didn't expect an answer like that, but it totally makes sense because it
Mm,
is the men that are in these positions, and you
yes.
need people like that to make the changes, and you need to educate them and provide them the information, the knowledge, and the stats, like you mentioned.
Yes, and the support, right? Like,
Yeah.
men men have been looked at for a long time like, you are the problem. And what happens when you look at someone and tell them that they're the problem? They are just gonna recoil, they're gonna get their back up,
Yeah.
they're gonna get defensive. And, we have this mentality, and I write about this in Women Rising, so it's a great book for women to read to understand all of this that we're talking about, and for men to read who want to be
Mhm.
good allies. I had a man come into our Male Allies program, and got on one of the coaching calls toward the end and he said, I'm so shocked. I thought I was going to get in this. I was put in this program by my organization. I just thought it was going to be full of militant feminists who were just going to tell me everything that's wrong with me. And instead, what I found were tools and support and coaching and a peer-to-peer community that is like, how do we do this together?
Yeah.
And that changes everything. So, like, we have to be inclusive and supportive and not divisive as
Yeah.
we do this work as well, for all genders.
I 100% agree. I do think that we all need to work together
Yeah.
collectively. I love that. And then I do want to ask for my listeners for some advice because I know there's women that have started their own business or are in the corporate space. If a woman listening feels unsupported or unseen at work, what's the first small step she can take to reclaim her power?
Yeah, great question. So I would ask her to ask herself, what does support look like and feel like for me? Like, what is it that I would like to see, and get really clear on that? And if she feels unseen, what does visibility look like? What is the type of visibility that I would like to have? Where do I want to be seen, and by whom, and doing what? Right? We want to get to some clarity and specificity
Yeah.
around, what is it? What is it really that I'm seeking? Because sometimes we start chasing, well, I want to be seen. I want to be seen over here for doing this. But when we really do the work and we really think about what is the actual visibility that I want? Who needs to see me for me to feel successful and for me to do what I'm doing now and be seen, and also maybe what's coming next? It can look like something completely different than we think it is because we haven't done that work.
Yeah.
So clarity, and this is all the stuff that I write about this in the book. We do this work in the Women Rising program, which any woman can join. That's the work. We always start with clarity. What's really going on here for me? What stories am I telling? What's my inner critic telling me about this situation that may be limiting an action that I could take to be seen, to feel supported? What do I need to ask for? Right? Like, so many of us sit back and we're like,
Yeah.
I'm not seen, I'm not supported, and da da da. And we get all up in our inner critic stories. And then when I ask a question on one of our coaching calls, like, number one, are you clear? And number two, have you asked?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, no and no. Okay, well,
Yeah.
let's do that work first, and then let's go make the ask or do the thing, take the action that needs to be taken. It sounds so simple, but we don't do it, right? So, yeah, always comes back to clarity. And for the sake of what is a question that I just love to ask in so many different circumstances. For the sake of what do I want to be visible? You
Yeah,
know?
that's great advice. I think it sounds easy. It's easier said than done because
Yes.
doing the self-reflection inner work is not necessarily easy.
It's not easy at all.
So,
It's
yes,
really
great
not.
advice.
Yeah, it's really not. You know, the first thing we teach in the Women Rising program is life vision, meaning, and purpose. And the women
Mhm.
come in all over the world, and they come in and they're like, they get stumped from the first lesson because it's like, what do you want for your life? When was the last time you asked yourself that question? Have you ever asked yourself that question? What is
Yeah.
it that you want for your life? What is your vision for yourself? And we have tears and like all this beautiful emotion because women realize, I have no idea. I haven't asked myself for 10 years, or I'm too afraid what the answer is going to be.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to keep being busy. I'm going to just keep on the treadmill because I don't want to go there. But this is the work, and it changes
Yeah.
everything when we really sit with ourselves and ask ourselves these questions.
Yeah, you need to face your fears and really sit with yourself to really figure out your purpose
Yeah.
and what you need to align on. I want to ask you about your personal experience. What's one belief you've personally had to unlearn in your own leadership journey?
Yeah, I think for me, the masculine drive and strive energy
Mhm.
is I think it was always quite inherent in me. Like, I always wanted to do good work in the world. I always wanted to be useful and feel purposeful, which is what drives all of the work that I do. I just want to be of service. I want it to be helpful. But like, I have to really balance out, and I have deeply feminine energy as well. I have deep spiritual practice. I spend a lot of time in that feminine energy. But I wish someone had told me in my 20s, you don't have to drive and strive all the time. Like, you can be your holistic, authentic self, and that this whole side of you around your feminine is so valuable and will help you be more successful than anything else if you can tap into that. Your intuition, your deep inner knowing, your feminine wisdom, and live and
Mhm.
lead from that place and not just drive in the masculine, which is what we see out there. I've had to really unlearn that and challenge my own stories around what success looks like.
Yeah.
And I think the other one, and I know so many women will relate to this, is that busyness equates to success. Like, we wear this
Yeah.
busyness, yeah, we wear this busyness like a badge of honor. And we think that if I just work harder, I will be more successful. And what feminine wisdom teaches us and feminine traits teaches us is that often it's actually the sitting back, the releasing, the surrendering, and the allowing that
Yep.
allows us to move forward in ways that we can never see when we're in that drive and strive energy.
I totally agree. Thank you. Thank you for speaking on that. I do have one last question for you. If you could speak to your younger self or, women starting her career or starting a new venture or business, what would you tell her about power and purpose?
I love this question. I would tell her that your intuition will guide you and you will stay true if you listen. And to listen, you need to get quiet
Yeah.
and you need space in your day, every day, to reflect and listen. Like, listen to yourself, listen to the messages that come in for you, that come from your deep inner knowing, and that will guide your purpose and that will keep you in your power, irrespective of anything that's going on outside of you. That your power and your purpose is in you. It's not out there. It's
Mhm.
inside you. And you get to tap into that. You get to live from that place. And that will help you override all of those inner critic stories, all of the social conditioning, and all of the external expectations that we lean into rather than leaning inward. And I think for someone starting a new venture, for someone starting out in their career, that I feel is probably the most important guidance that I could give.
Yeah. Women's intuition is truly a gift. Like, your body tells you before,
Always.
your mind does, right? You're
Yeah.
like, "Something doesn't feel right. I feel anxious." It could be fear, it could be a good thing. You just really have to, like you said, lean in and listen to yourself,
Yes.
because it would help you pave your own path into whatever success is for you, whatever your purpose is. Like, listen to yourself, because it is your life at the end, and you wanna make sure that you're happy, and that, you're happy in whatever you're doing and you're in alignment
In
with
alignment.
yourself.
Yes. And I love that you said that because your body always knows. And if
Mhm.
you start paying attention, it'll be what someone says to you and how your stomach reacts before your brain has caught up. Your body
Mhm.
knows, right?
Yeah.
It's an energetic reaction you have to someone or to a project. Or, you're going to go start this business over here, but you are constantly feeling sick and tense and exhausted because your body knows that you should be over here
Mhm.
doing this over here, but we're not listening, right? So your body is always your greatest source of what is going on for me, what is right, what is in alignment.
Yeah. Read that energy. Just read that energy
Read the
out.
energy, read the energy, feel it in your body. Your body will not lie
Yeah.
to you.
I totally agree. I love
Yeah.
that. So, Megan, where can my listeners find more information about you and your Women Rising program?
Thank you for asking. So womenrisingco.com is where everything Women Rising lives, around the programs and the book, and megandallacamina.com for everything else, all of my other writing and work and feminine wisdom teachings and other things. So yeah, they're the two places. And I'm everywhere on social media at Megan Dalla-Camina. There's only one of me that I have found. So you'll find me. Love to connect with people.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Megan. That's it for today's episode of Sonia Space. And thank you for sharing your insight. And if you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe on YouTube, leave a review, and share it with someone who might find it valuable. I will also be providing more details about Megan under the episode description. Until then, see you next time.